Hello, my name is Kerry Blackman, and this presentation is going to be about optimizing quail nutrition, amino acids, and vitamins. We're going to talk about unlocking the genetic potential and fertility. So, today we'll learn about some key nutrients for quail that have to do with not only their health but their growth. And some of them will also assist with better fertility rates. We'll focus on amino acids, we'll focus on some vitamins and some other stuff, some minerals that the birds, it just really helps them flourish. And we can bring up the question of why do you think nutrition is important for quail? I get that question a lot. And the quick answer that I have for it is, why is nutrition important for people? It helps us to stay alive, helps us to be healthy, helps us to be vibrant, have good lives. Having good nutrition really helps us flourish as people. And that's important too for poultry because most of us are keeping quail and you can really apply this to any kind of animal. We're doing it for a purpose, whether it be meat and eggs, whether it be because you like the sound the bird makes, whether you think they're pretty and you like to look at them, maybe a combination of all that. Nutrition plays a key role in that. So we'll discuss a little bit about what makes that important too. Quail do have really high metabolic rates and some very specific nutritional requirements. And we're going to talk about some of those in a minute. One of the things that really got me interested into quail is I grew up raising chickens. I've had chickens ever since I was a little kid. And as I got older, I wanted to learn more about genetics and more about really breeding and how to take a bird with this trait and have a bird that has that trait or offset. If I'm looking for, let's say I breed Rhode Island Reds too. And if I have a male bird that has a crooked comb, how can I fix that in the breeding pen? Here's the thing. If you have certain traits, you can pair them together with something to offset that. But one of the easiest ways to do that is with quail, because quail and chickens are both poultry and a lot of the same breeding techniques work, but you can see the results a lot faster in the quail because they have that high metabolic rate. They mature a lot faster. It's just, it's huge when you're trying to play with stuff and test things out and see. Proper nutrition with quail and any other animal is really going to help them reach their full genetic potential. A lot of birds say, this is what I get. And so for me personally, my Pharaohs and my whites, I can get them to 15 to 16 ounces in anywhere to 8 weeks, usually no more than 10 weeks. And I've had people buy them and say, I did not have that result. I said, the first question I ask is, send me a copy of your feed tag and I want to see where you're housing them. And a lot of times they're buying them cheap feed that doesn't cost as much because they're on a budget or whatever. A lot of people get quail because they're on a budget and they can't afford chickens or whatever the reasoning is. And I said, that feed does not meet the nutritional requirements of quail and it can't keep up with their high metabolic rate and their rapid growth and things of that nature. So that's why you did not feed them a feed to unlock their genetic potential. And I make some suggestions on some stuff to feed. And I actually had one person that said, okay. And I was like, you're getting eggs by now. So hatch some out. And I want you to feed those birds this particular feed. It's the one that's available on Chewy. so anybody can get it. And I said, do that. If you don't get the desired rate of growth, like what I have in my birds, then I'll buy them back from you and I'll pay you for the feed. I've never gotten a call back. So we'll talk about that, some of the whys behind that and what they are. Key nutritions, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals. We'll look at some of those in a little bit. And we'll also touch on what do you think happens if quail don't get proper nutrition. On the short term, they're not going to have the rapid growth that you're looking for. If you're trying to raise them for meat birds, you're not going to get you that 15, 16 ounce bird. So you can have a full hearty amount for, you're not going to get the biggest bang out of your buck, so to speak. Amino acids are the building blocks of the proteins. Amino acids are responsible for everything from fertility to feather growth, the plumage on them, the sheen that the feathers have, the way the bird behaves. Some of that's going to be to do with the amino acids. Some of that also has to do with some of the vitamins. Two important that most people see are going to be lysine and methionine. We'll talk about the levels that you should be looking for on your feed tag. And these can be plus or minus 10%, maybe even 20%, depending on which one it is and how it affects the bird and how they affect the growth, the feather health, and all that. A lot of that has to do with those amino acids and the vitamins. Just like you would give a person vitamins, birds need them too, so they can flourish and grow and do the things that we want them to do. Can you guess why feather health is important for quail? No. Feather health is important to quail because a lot of people, they'll put their quail outside. Quail are designed to be outside. They're very hardy birds. And if they have a really strong feather health, you can be like my friend Bree, who lives really far up north, and she'll have her quail outside in so cold weather that she has to put an aquarium pump inside the waterer just to keep it from freezing. Snow, I've seen pictures of snow all around her quail cages, but her birds are fine because she feeds her birds a solid, balanced diet and they have feather health. And while we're on that topic, I will say that methionine is extremely important and related to the feather health because you can actually find methionine in feathers. So a lot of times you'll see in a lot of the groups, my birds are picking, my birds are picking. They're eating each other's feathers. What's wrong? People go to mites, they go to diseases and all kinds of stuff. Me on the nutritional side, first thing I want to know is send me a picture of your feed tag, post that in the comments and tag me. And they'll do it. And a lot of times the methionine level is really low. And I'll tell them your methionine level is really low. You need to supplement that or find a feed that has a higher methionine level. Not only will you see your birds stop eating each other's feathers or their own in some cases, but you will also see healthier birds and the feathers that regrow back to replace them will look a lot better. Lysine is like the growth helper. Lysine early on in a bird, and you can see this little chick here is a couple weeks old. It really supports muscle development and tissue development and repair. So having proper lysine amounts in the adolescent straight out of the hatcher is really important for that chick growth to develop proper amounts of muscle the way it should. They're very rapidly growing birds. We talked about that before. And they need that lysine, that amino acid, to help that rapid growth development. As they get older, having that lysine, it will help increase the egg size, the yolk quality. That's why a lot of people will say that a quail egg is 2 or 3 times more nutritious than a chicken egg. Quails also have a higher requirement of amino acids than chickens do to a point. So that's one of the things that it's tied to. Lysine is also key for it also helps with the feathers to have strong and healthy feathers. And how might better feathers help? We've already touched on that. We talked about cold weather hardiness. Let's say that you've got one of the feather sexable varieties. Having great quality feathers is going to make it to where I know some people that have really good line of pharaohs and really good lines of Egyptians that can look at their feathers in that 2 to 3 week range and say, this is a male, this is a female, this is your hen, this is your roux. And a lot of people are like, that's very early. Yes, it is. But when you're feeding a feed that has those proper levels of amino acids, that development happens earlier. That's one of the ways that it would help as the bird develops. Methionine, not only is it found in feathers, but the reason why you'll see a lot of older birds plucking others is because number one, if you have methionine in their diet, it improves the feather growth and it shortens the molting process. It helps them recuperate from the molt when the birds do that. It also helps strengthen the eggshells and improves the yolk color. A lot of people say, oh, I put paprika in my chicken feed because it improves, it gives them that dark, rich yolk. Have you ever wondered why? The two may be linked. Also, it helps with the quail's immune system. Again, fighting off diseases, being weather hardy, not being susceptible to certain bacterias and things like that. There again, having those proper amino acid levels is what really helps make that bird healthy. And it's the egg yolk, it's the egg itself, it's the immune system, it's the beauty in the bird. There's a whole lot of stuff that amino acids are linked to the health of the bird. So, why do you think that strong eggshells are important? To me, for quails, having a strong eggshell is very important because they're so small and they're so delicate. So that's another reason why you want to make sure that your birds have the amino acids that they need and the vitamins and minerals that they need is to make sure that those eggs, if they're cracked when you harvest them, they're not going to be any good to you unless you eat it right away, or otherwise it could get some kind of something inside of it and not be good for the whoever consumes it. And it's definitely, you're not going to be able to hatch successfully too many eggs that have cracks in them. So you want to protect those eggs and make sure that they're done really well too. So now we're talking about vitamins. You got vitamins A, D, and E. Those are the ones that you typically will see added into feed them when you look at the feed tags. And you will also see them listed in the guaranteed analysis, the amounts of vitamins A, D, and E. So vitamin A, it supports vision and egg fertility. Those are the two primary functions that it has. There are other things that it contributes, but those are the two main ones that really benefit quails for the vitamin A. Vitamin D, it's going to help with strong bones and eggshells. Look, if if you have quail now and you've held them, you know that they're small, they're tiny animals. So having strong bones is important because quail don't fly very well unless you have some mature bob whites. If you have pharaohs, Egyptians, some of the Coturnixes, especially if you have jumbo lines that are big and heavy, they don't really fly a whole lot. If one was to, let's say you had it on table because you're taking some cute pictures to post on your social media, or if you sell live birds and you need to take some good pictures to post them on the website or whatever, let's say the bird falls. If the bird doesn't have that vitamin D at good levels, it's going to break their bones, and that's not going to be good. That's an unhealthy bird. That bird doesn't have any vigor. and that's not something you're going to want to breed true or breed forward. So you're not going to want it in your breeding program as a breeder. And it's not something that you're going to want to sell to somebody. Vitamin E is another one that's important because it protects the cells and improves egg hatchability. And the way that it does that is it helps these vitamins, they do the things listed here and the things that we talked about, but they also help process the amino acids to make the body use them better, make them more efficient, which quail they're small. They are very efficient birds. Now, here's a question. Which vitamin do you think might help prevent broken eggs? That's going to be vitamin D. Helps with bone development and the eggshell development. Vitamin D also, coincidentally, if you look at a lot of these, they have the same effects on humans. That's one of the ways that it makes it easier when you start studying poultry nutrition, is because in poultry, a lot of stuff has the same effect in poultry as it does in humans. Here is a table that was created by Jeff Maddox of the Fertrell Company. He's a really good friend of mine. He has created the recipes that I use in some of my custom blends and some other things that he's helped me with. He has also helped me learn an incredible amount about poultry nutrition and poultry science as it relates to that stuff. But these are some levels that you should look for. Now, I will say that a lot of people, protein is at the top. A lot of people say protein is an important number. I'm going to say that from what I learned, protein is not the most important number on here. Protein is, protein can vary by 10%, maybe even a little more, if the amino acids and the vitamins are where they should be. And the reason I say that is because I know some breeders, a lot of them, you'll see presentations by a couple of them on this same series. They don't use 20% layer feed, they use 18% layer feed. But the lysine is where it should be or higher. The methionine is what it should be or higher. The vitamins A, D, and E are what they should be or very close. The amount of fiber is there, the calcium is there, the fat content in the feed, all that stuff that plays a role is there. So when you do that, when you have everything else, you can play with the protein levels just a little bit. And a lot of people put influence on the protein because, everybody says, oh, I have this protein chicken feed, this protein game bird feed or whatever. But what really makes the feed is the amino acids and the vitamins. And one of the things that I have learned in having a feed mill is that's also what drives the price. And if you'll look at, let's say you get some starter feed, anywhere from an 18% starter all the way up to a 28% starter, and you look at the price as it relates to it, you'll see a little bit. You've obviously got the protein, but you'll see bigger differences in the amount of amino acids, because that's the amino acids and the vitamins are a lot of what makes up the driving force of the cost of your feed. And I will say this, I'll save it for another presentation later, but I will say that typically your more expensive feeds have less fillers in them. They have more nutrition in them, and they have higher quality grains, which is what makes up the expense. And when a bird is eating a complete food, they eat less. And when they eat less, you save sometimes as much as 20%, 25%. So it can add up. So when you're looking at feed, don't just look at the cost and the protein level. Check out all of your amino acids and your vitamins as well, because if you want your birds to perform at their genetic potential, you're going to have to feed them that way too. Nutrients working together, amino acids and the vitamin work together like a team. They help them grow. They help produce eggs. They help keep the bird's immune system solid. They balance the nutrition, help them to perform better. You can take a bird and feed it a complete feed, and you can have birds in a brooder and feed them a different feed. And some of the effects that you're going to see is anything from the consistency of the manure, the smell of the manure, the feathers, the condition of the feathers, the hatchability of your eggs, the fertility of the eggs, which fertility and hatchability tend to go together, the quality of the eggs. When you're feeding a more nutritionally balanced feed, you're going to have birds that look good. You're going to have active birds. You're going to have solid eggshells. You're going to have really good hatch rates. As a breeder, those are all things that you want. And I tell people, I say, I understand that these are animals. I get that. And I get that they have a purpose. But you need to think about it. When you're asking them to perform to the max, that's going to create an appetite, just like we as people. If we go out and do a job and work on the farm every day, you're going to work up an appetite and you're going to be hungry and you're going to eat. And if you eat a good quality meal, you can get up and you can do it again tomorrow over and over and over. But if you're working and you're doing manual labor and you eat honey buns and other snack cakes and maybe a sandwich that's got a lot of processed meats in it and other junk that you stick in it, that's going to build up in you and you're not really going to feel like performing at your best. And that's when you yourself starts to go downhill. So if you want quail to pop out 300 eggs a year and you want to have really good hatch rates when you try to hatch out those replacements to re-up your stock, you really need to take care of their nutritional needs because it all ties in together. It helps you unlock the quail's potential. Good nutrition helps quail reach their full genetic potential. It leads to faster growth, stronger bones, improves egg production, improves your chick survival rate. And what other benefits do you think could come from well nourished quail? Well, let me ask you this. If you plan on eating those quail, if you feed them a high omega diet, do you think those high omegas will go into your body as well? Yep, they sure will. That's another thing. A lot of people that are raising quail from eating eggs, you're doing it because you want to eat better. But if you're feeding them crap and then you're eating them, when you think about it like that, it really sounds different. So that's another reason why it's important to feed your quail better and give them a well nourished, balanced diet. It really benefits everything. Nutrition tips for quail care, high quality commercial feeds, talk to a nutritionist to get a custom ration. That's one thing you can do. You can email me, Carrie@carrieblackman.com, and I can get you. What I really like to have is a list of the grains and the amino acids or the grains and stuff like this available in bulk at your local feed store. And then I can take that and what you have, and we can build you a ration that you can get that your birds will flourish. And with that, you can monitor your quail growth and your egg production. Very important to store feed properly to maintain the nutrient quality. Number one, you don't want feed that's old and stale, that's not been sealed up. So that's important. You want to keep it fresh because if it's not fresh, it starts to mold, bacteria starts to grow in it, especially if you're in the South where it's really humid because bacteria flourishes in humid environments. So it's really important that you don't purchase no more feed than what you're going to use in a short period of time. And it's also important that you store it properly and keep it dry, which is very important. So today we've learned about amino acids and vitamins for quail, how the nutrients are critical for growth and reproduction. We've looked at a chart that has balanced nutrition, what the numbers should be, so you can hang on to that. Hopefully, that was up long enough for you to take a screenshot or whatever you need to of it, so you can be smart when shopping for food. And what questions do you have about quail? Feel free to again send me an email at carrieblackman.com with any questions that you have, and I will be glad to help you. Have a wonderful afternoon.